morning, everyone. Again, thank you for joining us live on our multiple channels as far as Signals and Symptoms podcast. As usual, we want to bring value, value, value. And I'm very, very grateful that I'm joined by my good friend Jim and Tom from Lumen Astra, who's going to tell us how medical physical devices is impactful in the future of AI development as well. So it's going to be a very interesting talk today. I will ask them personally as a request to tell us all about their company, their product as well, so our audiences understand this. This is not sponsored, just FYI. And I'll tell you exactly that why I'm bringing them while we go ahead. So let's just start with a few updates, and then we're going to go ahead and introduce them both again, and then go from there. So number one, of course, our Harvey Castro is out as usual. I don't know where he is. He's flying somewhere, but most importantly, he was counted as the top 100 influential man of 2025 on LinkedIn. So amazing honor to him. Kudos, and he is trying to join. Unfortunately, he's not finding the internet, whichever part of the world he is today. Grateful to Ed Marks for joining us today. We're going to talk about Luminestra. This is, essentially a device. We're going to see what they're going to present, and we're going to ask some questions. And that Jim, of course, is an amazing human being. He has been in the industry for approximately at least 25, 30 years. He has had eight startups or so, four exits with acquisition. Amazing person who has helped multiple different startups as well, and he's leading the charge. Tom is a biomedical engineer who has actually helped us. Again, I've actually had him. We have been in communication for approximately 5 years when I was actually at Aurora Advocate Health. He has an MBA from MIT Saloon, and then he is also worked on the commercial side, and he is the business development for Luna Astra. Um, as far as the updates, today is a thin one. This is very important. Multilingual protects against accelerated aging in the cross-sectional analysis of 27 European countries. I bring this up because, of course, I'm a neurologist, and I'm bilingual, right? I started with Urdu and Arabic, and now, of course, English. So the idea was that there's a very important thought process, and Ed can comment on it in future, that the advent of automated translation with AI, do you really need to learn multilingualism? I just want to make sure you do, because literally that is the only one proven perfection thing. As a matter of fact, when my mom was actually thinking, oh, my head is not space, I told her to learn a new language, and that really helped. We all go through the aging process, learn multilingualism. A super learner with large language models for medical emergency advising. And this is, again, the way that we have talked about how we're going to basically structure our LLMs into an agentic model. So this was a very good read. I would recommend that you guys read this. Extremely important. And then today's most important topic is this is a comment from NPJ in Precision Oncology. All models are wrong. Yours are useless, making clinical prediction models impactful for patients. And that's where Jim and Tom is going to talk about today, that how data from medical devices needs to go into properly, and then how AI and new medical devices are going to work together. Not to mention their device by itself alone is fantastic. So again, just going back, Luminestra is basically developing a novel, non-invasive way to measure brain temperature. And this is so important in terms of doing cardiac surgeries, in terms of doing continuous monitoring in the neuro ICU. That I can never know exactly what the temperature of the brain is, because I need to remove that variable to ensure we want to maintain normothermia. We just don't know how to. And there are so many ways to control the temperature now, from padding to cold saline IV infusion to even their new solutions that are doing just the neck. And again, the goal is shifted from hypothermia to normothermia, but I just don't know how to measure it. And I'm so grateful they are working on this very problem. So without further ado, I'm going to let Jim reintroduce himself, then Tom, and then once you guys sort of take your 10, 20, 15 minutes, then we're going to start with the questions.
Okay, well, we're very, very excited to be here with you on a very emerging and important topic. And to give you a little overview of our company, so we founded a company just about 5 years ago, and we're very much a deep tech, as one of the terms is, company. Where we're using a technology that's actually it's very difficult. It's something that people have thought they could use to measure temperature of bodies for probably 30 or 40 years. When I first did due diligence on the technology itself, ran across some white papers and some investigations that had been done quite a few years ago. And what we're doing is we're a spin out from the University of Colorado, from the microwave lab there. And we're building a small sensor, very small sensor that can be placed anywhere in your body, and it measures internal body temperature. So, for example, if I put it on the forehead, which is our first focus, we can actually measure brain temperature in real time. So, isolate the brain, measure it. We could also place it over the liver, over kidneys, things that are very important organs in the body that typically aren't measured at all, just because it's very invasive. So, today, the only way to measure internal temperature during a surgery, during an ICU procedure, anytime in the hospital or out in the field, the only way to measure temperature is very invasively. So bladder temperature, esophageal temperature up through the nose and down through the throat are the only ways to get some kind of an internal temperature. And basically, it's only where it's convenient to get it as opposed to where you actually want it. And what we found is that if you just look at cardiac surgeries, and look at ICU trauma care, which Junaid is very, very involved with, we found there's about, just the US alone, there's about 2.1 million procedures every year performed that require managing brain temperature. And usually that's like in surgery, it's often cooling. You're having to cool the body or cool the brain in order to have enough time to lower the metabolism, to shut the blood supply off, reduce the blood supply, while a procedure is being done, like aortic repair, for example. In the ICU trauma care, typically it's managing to normothermia, keeping you at 37 degrees C, 98.6, roughly speaking, Fahrenheit. And to keep you from having either a fever or actually having hypothermia, getting too cold, to that would cause risk for infection and whatnot. So, out of these 2.1 million procedures that require managing brain temperature, all of them today typically use bladder temperature as a surrogate because you can't measure brain temperature. And so it's, in fact, when we talked to a lot of surgeons and all, when we did some of our customer discovery interviews and whatnot, um, usually the first reaction we get is, "You can do what?" Measuring brain temperature. And then the second reaction is, "Well, I'm not sure what brain temperature is even supposed to be, actually, because we are always using something else as a surrogate," and they learn how to compensate for that. And we'll give you one really good example is aortic repair. That's where you get an aortic dissection or an aneurysm in the aortic arch. And of course, that's the key piece of organ there that actually supplies the blood to the brain. So they have to shut the blood supply off to the brain while they make the repair, put a graft in, into the aortic arch. And so they got to deep cool the brain. Typically, there's two kind of veils of thought there. One is cooling you down to 14 degrees C, and the other about 24. Either way, it's a deep cooling of your brain. But in order to do that, they're again measuring bladder temperature, which we know actually lags the brain temperature when you're cooling by about 15 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes.
Yes, that is so
And
important. 15 minutes.
yeah, it's a very key thing, and that also implies that basically a change in brain temperature doesn't show up in the bladder for usually 15 to 20 minutes or so.
Yep.
So there's two really interesting things there. And so what happens is, even though we know it's not there, we know it, but we don't know it. The surgeon doesn't know that it's actually reached that temperature. So the typical procedure is to take the bladder down to the target temperature, and then wait a few extra minutes to assume that the brain will also reach the same steady state, but they just don't know that it's there. Then they shut off the blood supply, do the procedure. It's about 17% of people die during this surgery. Over 60% of the patients will have some amount of cognitive loss, neural damage, during this time at cold. So the key thing is you got to be cold in order to have the time to do the procedure, but the longer you're cold past the threshold, there's a very much increased risk of neural damage, bleeding, and other side effects, including death itself. So what we're doing is by having a sensor that actually measures brain temperature directly, we can knock that. Now we see what the brain temperature is in real time. So we see changes in just a few milliseconds. And so that allows the surgeon to know exactly when the brain reaches the target temperature. And as we said, it's about 15 to 20 minutes sooner than the bladder does. So they can go ahead and confidently shut the blood supply off, make the procedure occur, and then get them warmed back up again. And also, we've talked to perfusionists that actually do the cooling system, the bypass cooling. They get excited about this, and there's something we actually didn't anticipate. But what they get excited about is the ability to warm the patient up quicker and safer, because you don't want to go above 37 degrees. So typically what they do, again, since they're also looking at bladder temperature with a long delay, they set their final set temperature at 37. So the blood they're putting back in the body is 37, which means you're very slowly getting back to the actual temperature so that you don't go over 37. And the perfusionists tell us that, hey, if I know brain temperature in real time, I want to set my set point at like 37 and a half, get you up pretty darn close to 37 quickly, then hit my set point at 37 for the finish. And they think they can knock, we've heard up almost 30 minutes cutting off of the warming time. And overall, what that means is that by cutting this time down, the amount of time you're cold is reduced. We think we can reduce the mortality rate by over 20%. And the overall procedure time drops by easily half an hour or so, which means that and these are huge teams of people working, in aortic repair. And it means that those people can get back to other procedures, other jobs, and other things a lot faster. So there's the time savings, there's the safety savings. So there's just really a lot of interesting benefits by being able to measure that. Tom, you want to talk a little about just the other big application we see is in the ICU after cardiac
before you
arrest
get
and
into
stroke.
it, Tom, I'm
Sure.
just going to tell you our audiences. Number one, I wanted to invest in the company. I just have my own investment thesis that I only invest in softwares. So no, if I did have the money, I would invest. There is nothing, again, this is not sponsored. I love what the product is and everything. Number two, this is, again, he talked about aortic surgery, right? Now think about protecting brain for any surgery. There's a 5% risk of stroke in freaking every goddamn surgery. Why can we not protect the brain? Just decreasing. I'm not talking about going all the way to 24 degrees or 14 degrees. Can we actually decrease the risk of those 5% of stroke for every surgery to 2.5%? Because the amount of cognitive deficits we can do, and we're talking about slow cooling. Now, let me explain the audiences and then Ed here, because he is actually ex-CIO of Mayo Clinic and Cleveland Clinic, etc. So these are like board members, and they need to understand when they start, thinking about these devices coming, because what kind of improvement can hypothermia? What is the problem? It decreases the ciliary clearance. So when it decreases the ciliary clearance, you have a significant increased chance of pneumonia. When you are hypothermia, kidneys, livers, retina, everything actually does get impacted. So more importantly for me is always not to go over hypothermia either. I don't have the measurements. We are just, honestly, at the end of the day, spitballing here. So let's not do that. And then once I have it, so we can actually control it, minimize the time of the extra significant extreme cooling, for example, in aortic is needed, but also when we do carotid endarterectomies. I'm currently using EEG to monitor and decrease the BIS monitor, etc. This could be so much better in terms of actually making sure. Why? Because EEG is one thing, because we want to really depress it, because when you cut through this and I take the cloud out, I don't, but I mean, I'm there in the room because I'm doing an EEG monitoring half the time or something like that. What I'm saying is that would be actually so useful to protect the brain, because we can actually go in through and remove the clot right away, right? I have the interventionist actually sitting there sometimes that, hey, we're going to do a carotid endarterectomy. If the clot is going to go up while I'm pulling it out, they can go in with a catheter and pull it out. If the brain was cooled, the damage that even that 5 to 6 minutes happens is going to decrease significantly. So my problem is always cooling. I'm going to let Tom first define traumatic brain injury, neuro ICU, use cases, and everything, and then we'll go. Harvey, you found a spot, man. The most influential man and most eligible bachelor in Dallas. I knew you guys were going to be out, and I wanted to bring Jim, and we'll send you contact informations and everything on the back end. Um, Tom, just 2 seconds. Ed is going to go away because he has a flight to catch. Ed, do you have any questions first of what you heard, and then we'll continue this whatever, however long Jim and Tom wants to.
Super fascinating and interesting. I do have a question, but first, an observation. I worked in the OR full time, and then at Cleveland Clinic, I worked in the OR once a week, and I was part of. I didn't do too many neurosurgeries, but a lot of cardio surgeries, and it was amazing. I don't think most of the audience would know that literally to cool the body and to cool the heart, like doing some very cabbage and things like that, where literally putting ice in people's bodies. I mean, that I don't think most people understand it. It was trippy for me actually to think that how, as much as advancements we've done in the OR and surgery and things like that, there's still a long way to go. So the fact that you all have come up with this technology, just talking about brain health now, and the ability to monitor in real time the brain temperature to save, I mean, that's dramatic. The stats that you were just citing, that's dramatic. That's transformational change in quality and saving people's lives. It's just amazing. But so my question is, the technology itself, it sounds like it's been around a while. Why do you think it's just now that people are open to this and interested in it, or what is it in the marketplace that has suddenly created this opportunity for you to introduce this amazing technology?
So as a lot of things in science these days, I've had an interesting conversation with a couple of MIT friends of mine recently, just talking about how do there's such a huge body of knowledge. There's so many PhDs out there, people with double PhDs. How do you actually learn enough in an area to actually make a contribution to it anymore? And the answer really is it's interdisciplinary. It's where you have several different technology areas coming together. I mean, bringing in, AI by itself is just another computational science kind of thing, but it's when you combine it with bioscience, with life sciences, with mechanical engineering, you combine it with another discipline, that's when the real benefit and stuff happens. Now for us, the technology we're using is a thing called, we're taking advantage of black body radiation, and that was actually the first photonic effect, quantum effect, that was actually discovered by Max Planck back in December 20th, 1900. So it's a quantum effect's been known for a long time, and what it is everything in the universe gives off broad spectrum energy, electromagnetic energy, proportional to its temperature. And so this first was used very often in radio telescopes. That's how we are making a little tiny miniature radio telescope that's aimed 4 centimeters into your body instead of being aimed 10,000 light years at a star to measure the temperature of that star. So radio astronomy uses this technology. Every weather satellite uses this, aimed down at the Earth to figure out precipitation, water content, and whatnot for weather predictions and whatnot. But what happened was people thought you should be able to do this. And so several people over the last 30 years or so have come up with a sensor not unlike, that looks like ours. They put it on the body with what they call a radiometer that makes the measurement, a microwave measurement. Put them on a treadmill, the power goes up. Take them off the treadmill, the power goes down. But they've had no idea how to actually calibrate that and get a temperature out of it. So it's just you're probably hotter, you're probably cooler, but we don't know how much at all. And that's where Zoya Popovich, who's a professor that we're working with, is one of the co-founders of our company. She DARPA was they wanted a sensor during the Afghanistan war. They wanted a sensor that could measure internal body temperature for early warning of heat stress, because they have thousands of casualties a year from heat stress in the military, humping around 130 pounds of gear, in bad environments. And so they went to a couple of different companies and a university to get a sensor, and they couldn't come up with anything. And Zoya ran across the professor and said, "Oh, I got some ideas on that." And she just brought a whole different direction to the problem and figured out how to do that calibration. And that's where kind of our patents and a lot of our IP is around how we actually do that and how we calibrate. Because what we're doing is we're measuring very, very small microwaves that are coming out that your body generates that are proportional to temperature, and it's going through 7 layers to get to the brain up here. We're going through skin, fat, muscle, bone, meninges, the fluid, and then the actual brain itself. And by going about 4 centimeters, we see about 4 centimeters deep, which gets us to the gray matter. But you have to calibrate because each one of those is kind of like looking through water, how it refracts. It does the same. All these layers do that to the signal coming out of your body. So we've come up with a way to come up with weighting factors and all to be able to extract and find the actual brain temperature. But so it's something that people expected you could do, but no one figured out how to actually do it until we just had somebody look at it from a whole different direction and had the aha moment.
Just to add, for me, the exciting part is the non-invasive part that you can just stick a patch. Can you show the patch again, Jim? That is just amazing.
Yeah, this is roughly the size.
Yeah,
this is roughly the size. I don't have one with me at the moment here. I always carry one with me, and all of a sudden I'm calling in from home. I didn't have one here at home, so I apologize.
I mean, we need to.
It's roughly the size of an app. It's roughly the size of an Apple Watch. Is basically the size of our.
We need to figure out when what my temperature is when I'm talking to my wife and she's in a bad mood too. So. Anyways, so just to let you know, and I'm very interested because it actually opens up the non-invasive part, but opens up a lot of my options to cool. I can use intravascular cooling. I can just thread an artery up to the brain and then ask them to cool only the brain part while they're doing the surgery quickly. It reduces the overall, again, OR time. That is so important. Any time under the ventilator is always very tough, especially with these patients who have cardiac issues. And then the number 3 that I'm excited is what Tom is going to say, so I'm going to let him talk about it. Tom, go ahead. What we sort of talked about, the applications in neuro ICU and beyond just, any surgery.
Yeah, so to give some background, I previously worked for BD in their targeted temperature management division, working with the Arctic Sun. And one of the things that I would hear from doctors who were using this, it was primarily after a cardiac arrest. They were cooling their patients down to make sure that they were able to have the best chance of recovery. And, they would be controlling using the bladder temperature, but they really wanted to know the brain temperature. They're trying to control the brain. There's some controversy about targeted temperature management in terms of what is the right target temperature for these patients to reach. What's best for them? Is it 33 degrees, 36 degrees, 37 degrees, just making sure they're not getting a fever. But really, they're looking at that with that surrogate measurement from the bladder. So it's an interesting thing for us to think about. Has that controversy really just been around, are they measuring it the right way? So wherever you look at those, those models that you were showing at the start of this, Junaid, it's a matter of, are we making our decisions on the right information? And really, that's where we think Lumen Astra plays into a lot of this, big data revolution that we have with AI and healthcare. If we're making decisions on data coming in on temperature, we want to make sure we're making it on what we're actually trying to measure, not something that is similar but can be different for different people. Someone that's a larger individual, their bladder temperature is going to change at a different rate than someone who's a smaller elderly person. So just thinking about all those other variables that come in, it's going to have an impact on what that temperature is. So are we making decisions on this target temperature based on the right information coming in? So this is something that we can have that's going to be truly non-invasive, unlike what they're using today, is going to be, they'd be able to control what they're actually trying to measure instead of something else here. So something that would have a big impact and could help to settle some of this information about what's the right dosage when we think about temperature as a therapy and treatment for cardiac arrest, for TBI, for stroke.
Just to give you a little bit of background, again, extremely important when you're ICU. What we have done is that TTM, again, there is no confusion about normothermia for sure. Hypothermia, there is no confusion, it helps. The problem is not the hypothermia. The problem is that the rest of the body becomes so many complications that the benefit that I got from the hypothermia, the risk went up, and therefore I lost all the benefit. So with these measurement tools, I can actually more slowly target, slowly warm, slowly increase. I can do a little bit more management. And I'm just going to tell you one story that you're going to laugh. There are ice packs everywhere. Arctic Sun is there. And I thought the patient is being cooled. And then after 7 hours or so, we realized that the catheter was out. And it was measuring the Arctic Sun. This happens. I mean, what can you do?
Yep.
This is unfortunate, but it happens in the ICU. I mean, I can tell you stories about ICU. You're going to hate it. Ed, I know you probably have to log off to get on the flight. Please do so. The second thing I want to tell you right now is that again, there are crucial times that I need to adjust. So, for example, the ICP went up high, right? The EVD is there because that's measuring the intracerebral pressure, and then it's going up. And then I've used mannitol, hypertonic saline solution. I've done everything manageable possible except for pop the skull out, which again is a big discussion. But long story short, I need to quickly cool the patient for some minutes, let the brain relax, and then go back up slowly. These controls I don't have because I don't have measurement. So therefore, you need to understand that I don't have act control, and therefore I cannot dose. Think about literally dosing any medication from 500 milligrams to 1000 milligrams to 1500 milligrams. The only reason that I cannot do it because I cannot measure it. And now that I can have a measurement tool, I can actually talk about it. And number two, of course, the current measurement possibilities are insane. I mean, and the third thing I want to also emphasize that once you have the measurement pathway, I know there are multiple other startups that are working on just cooling the brain from an intranasal, from ear, even as I talked to you about intravascular. None of them can come to market because they don't have measurement. So this will explode into a real breakthrough for other startup companies to come into this fold and bring us these solutions where we can have localized regional hypothermia approach. Let's say you're doing just a liver cancer extraction. Why don't you just cool the freaking liver for a little bit so that even if there is a bleeding, then it will be contained, or whatever that case may be. Because as I said, every time you do something, you have a chance of throwing a clot into the brain, causing strokes, heart attacks, etc. And once we have the technology to measure better, then we can have the technology to improve hypothermia regionally as well. So Tom, thank you so much for sharing that.
Jen, I was going to say that you actually bring up a really important point, which is if you can't measure something, it changes your thinking about how you think about the problem. So, for example, if I can't measure brain temperature, then there's really not too much need for just only if I had a technology for just cooling the brain itself, you can't take advantage of that. And so by having something new, like if I could actually measure brain temperature in real time, measure liver temperature, kidney temperature, then all of a sudden it just changes your thinking. And all of a sudden we're going to have a lot of aha moments now where people say, okay,
Correct.
Here's something we've thought about, but it just wasn't worthwhile. So I haven't thought about it for several years. Now we have a new opportunity to actually do and take an action because of one technology, begats many other technologies very often and solutions.
Correct. I mean, I had to do CPR on a patient for 40 minutes, and I called my cardiologist to put an intra-aortic balloon pump, and in the aorta, it's pushing the blood, right? And then I'm taking the patient to the neuro to basically take off the pop off the skull or whatever the bleed is. And now I'm just sitting there and I'm not cooling the patient. Why not? This is stupid. The reason I'm not doing it because I don't know if the pneumonia is going to do and all of this process. The minute I have this, and the patient is already intra-aortic, just guide the whole catheter up a little more and cool it. Right? Yeah. By the time the patient gets to the surgery, it's because I already have a femoral access site, already have an intra-aortic balloon. I can guide another catheter up slightly. So and then just a little bit up. I mean, you don't need a neuro intensivist for it. The interventional cardiologist can do that. And then you can, and just not too much, cool it down enough. I mean, honestly, I'm going to tell you the story. I never told anyone. So, anyways, um, people don't realize in ICU there's one thing called compassion fatigue, and the reason that I went out of in-person neuro ICU after being the director of neuro ICU, director of stroke for 3.5 years, is that I lost a 24-year-old. She was an amazing person, and then she had two twins at the age of 3 years old, which was exactly the age of my daughter. And we did everything, and unfortunately, she passed. And then she was actually an organ donor as well. And what I still remember everything because the grandmother came at the end and then actually thanked me that, Junaid, when you walked in, everything started happening. I know the result was not ideal, but then it just put me to tears because at that point she brought the twin daughters, and I just wanted to see how I could have changed anything. And maybe I couldn't. Maybe this may not have helped because, of course, I believe in the Lord and the everything in any capacity, whatever that case. We call it the force. But at the end of the day, I wish we had some of these technologies that we can just for some minutes freeze the brain for 20, 30 minutes, literally, not that. Because I was able to get her in the OR in less than 17 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
but still
Yeah.
lost her.
Well,
Anyways,
healthcare in general it's an extremely personal experience. Beyond there's technologies, there's science, there's drugs, there's all kinds of things that get involved with healthcare and whatnot. But it's really a personal experience. We just to mention something briefly, the brain is the thing we've been focused on. But when we first started the company, the first thing we did was and for any of you out there that are ever thinking about doing a startup company of your own, number one thing to do is customer discovery. Go out and talk to customers. We learned so much the first time I met Junaid, to talk to him about his job and what his perspective is on it, that it illuminates a lot of things for us, and it makes us understand how important things are and what things that aren't important that we can skip on. But we did about 20, 25 interviews real quick just to see, was there any other technology out there we just weren't aware of? Is there really a need for a brain temperature or other parts of internal temperatures like that? And we just got a resounding response, and we actually identified over about a dozen different applications. And so brain we've talked about, clinical applications we've talked about, but just a few others, like I mentioned, military, from being able to do early warning of heat stress. Now, early warning of heat stress isn't just for military. Think about a fireman. They got 3 layers of insulation on their body. They're highly stressed in the job they're doing, and they've got a huge radiant heat source right that they're in the middle of the whole time. So you talk about heat stress. Firemen go through this just all the time. And we've talked to a few firemen and found out that basically asked them, they know that it's a problem. They said, boy, if you could actually measure internal temperature and get that out to one of our medical people, then we would know someone's in trouble before it happens. And I'd put it on every single one of our people, our personnel. And what we asked him, said, well, when is it right now? When do you actually measure the internal temperature? And he said, in the hospital. It's after something's happened.
We're building mobile stroke units. I mean, people are having a stroke. The ambulance has a CAT scanner. We can actually just, put that. This is insane because I know if it's a bleed, we might be able to secondarily know that is it going to be a bleeding type or not. I mean, this is all hypothetical. I'm just saying that there are so many new applications that we're going to develop, hopefully, the aha moments that she is talking about. Jim, can you share what exactly is the roadmap from today? What is your fundraising strategy as well? We would like Harvey's and mine and Edward's audiences do include a lot of VCs and everything. So we would love to know about what the process is going to be, and then ask whatever your ask is, both in terms of, as you know, I'm a startup founder too, and I like to explore these technologies. We're going to bring more people to understand this process because we truly believe in these transformational technologies. So the floor is yours. Go ahead, whatever you want to share.
Yeah, so at a high level, the general roadmap we have. So when we did those first interviews, we identified a bunch of different applications. And then what we did was we started doing a lot more interviews, and we ended up doing probably, I think we've talked to over 200 different people now, mostly in medical profession, and to further identify the applications and needs, the priorities, et cetera. And so we ended up with a roadmap of priorities. So the first thing we're trying to do is brain temperature in general before we go to other parts of the body. And then secondly, with the brain temperature, there's an awful lot of different things that it affects. So we're looking at, one is in the cardiology area. So looking at aortic repair very specifically, because there's 32,000 of those every year, high death rate, et cetera. So we know that's a priority. And so that's one we're focused on right now. But then from there, we want to go to general cardiac, any kind of general cardiac surgery, anytime there's a bypass and any kind of cooling, even mild hypothermia, like the cabbage that Junaid mentioned a minute ago. And then from after surgery, we want to go to the ICU, and there's 3 specific things: ICU trauma care for post-cardiac arrest, after stroke, and after brain trauma or TBIs, where we're trying to measure to normothermia. And then from there, we sort of see a second, and this is all going to be basically a wired sensor, because generally in surgery, where it's emergency situations very often, they don't want to, they actually have told us they don't want a Bluetooth, or they don't want a wireless device. They want something they can basically peel, stick, plug in, get results. But then we know we can actually miniaturize this and get down to a wireless. So in the future, we're going to be having a second product line that's actually a wearable. And the idea there would be things like, again, early warning of heat stress and hypothermia, so military, the first responders, and then a very interesting one, maybe we'll get to in a minute, is an incredible, it's a very awakening story in athletics. And so we think there's a huge application for athletics, both for performance optimization and safety and all. And then also getting into consumer thermometry. That was actually our the last area you wanted to get into, because getting into consumer thermometry, there's already 110 companies that make thermometers for a consumer, mostly all infrared scanning now. They scan your forehead.
But just for your knowledge, the way I'm going to use this, because metabolomics is becoming an extremely important field for this. So just so that people understand, for my health, the KPIs are very different. We don't understand that VO2 is the most important, right? I mean, that was like the KPI that nobody knew like 5 years ago. Now, of course, everyone wants to do this. There's actually a true, in my opinion, it's a different market, but I love it that you said it. But there's a longevity market that is going to come through, in which your device is going to be very important for with VO2, essentially doing, I mean, currently the patch can last like 8 hours or so, or 12 hours, whatever the design is. We can improve it for 24 hours. And once I have that data, that is going to be improvement, not to mention, I mean, in ovulation, right? Well, people that are trying to get pregnant, that is such a huge important one. More better right at the, at the abdominal, rather than, checking it again with the mouth. Like, why? Like, do you understand what I'm trying to say? And you go in the depth of 4 centimeters. So those are niche consumer places that you might go into. One would be longevity. Number 2 would be, as I told you, ovulation. But I just want to show you guys something that is more important. Again, not to brag my own truth, but why not? This is what we have built for our acute neurology, right? We are currently building this process in which you guys can see my screen.
Not quite yet.
Window, Canva, share. Let's see if it works. Oh, come on. Oh, there it is. It says it's sharing. You guys share? Do you see it?
Yes. Now it came up.
Okay, perfect. So this is going to be a real-time dashboard, because it's all about acute care and everything. And I'm going to have AI imaging findings, or whatever, QA extraction, verification. And the whole goal of combining all these data silos is to understand how much we're going to need help in terms of post-stroke rehabilitation. And now I can have another important piece of information, that throughout the process, the minute the ambulance goes in, strap this, goes through the whole process of T and K, and everything comes back out. And now on this dashboard, there's another dashboard called Luminastra that's going to give you brain reading for the last 12 hours or so, essentially telling us that, what to expect, because it's very hard. I mean, again, things, remember, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And then we can start this and then eventually, again, start improving the whole process with more measurements as we go along.
Yeah.
You're on seed round, right, Jim?
Yes. So as I said, that's kind of our roadmap of things we're trying to build. And
Mhm.
in order to get there, first off, I mean, I want to say that we've got this is my eighth early stage company I've been involved with,
Yes.
and by far, this is just it's one of the most exciting applications I've ever been involved with, and two, probably the most exciting team I've ever had a chance to work with, because it was very deep tech, very hard. Basically, it's very hard science to do. In fact, when we started the company, we knew we had several years of work to do to get it before it could be commercialized. And so
I know, because I wanted to hire Tom, but you got to him faster.
No, we're not going to let you have him there. That's
He's
actually
one of the
not that's
best.
not his real name, so you can't find him. But we've
fantastic team, no doubt about it.
So we've got we've got a couple of MIT people. The founder of my co-founder and the inventor of this technology is a Caltech PhD. We've got two other PhDs from the University of Colorado that are in microwave and in physics that are working on our algorithms for extracting temperature, et cetera. But because this is a novel thing, it hasn't been done before, and because there's such an important potential societal level impact of what we can do with this technology, it made it easier for us to actually find non-dilutive funding. So far, in fact, we're very fortunate, knock on some wood here, is that we're 7 for 8. Thank you, Johnny. We always need some support like that. But we're 7 for 8 in our grant applications and wins.
Wow.
So we've raised $3.3 million from National Science Foundation, from the U.S. Army, from the state of Colorado. We've got 2 grant applications out right now with the National Institute of Health, NIH, that think this is a very important technology for them, as well as a military proposal out with thing called CDMRP, which is the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Projects. And that's aimed at military applications that have dual use. It can also be used in civilian, applications as well.
Beautiful.
But the problem is, so we've been able to raise a lot of money like that, and we're going to continue to do that because we think the non-dilutive money is a very good way for us to protect, investors in our company, et cetera, from dilution and whatnot. But also,
it gives you the proof that this is important.
It does. Because these are very competitive, and they're getting more competitive because with the clawbacks recently from the government, that's actually why we've actually shifted. Well, not shifted. We're still going to be going for non-dilutive grants, but we've also put an emphasis, and we're trying to raise some outside money right now. In fact, we're looking to get us through right up to our FDA submission next year. We're looking for about 1.2 million right now, and we just closed our first piece of that, 150,000, just last week and last Thursday. So that's exciting for us. But basically what we're looking to do is about 1.2 million now, and then probably next year about 4 million. And then we actually we know we need probably about 10 to 15 million after that to get everything into market, to really just scale up a sales force and distribution channels, et cetera. However, we think a lot of that's going to come from still non-dilutive funding from NIH. We'll be able to do a lot of little mini trials as we go along. For each application we get into, doing a trial to show the efficacy, like for cardiac arrest, for TBIs, for stroke, et cetera. And we think a lot of those will be able to do non-dilutive funding. So that's kind of our path, both from a technology standpoint, and then also that's our
Beautiful.
kind of our a little bit of our financial path there. So
awesome. I love it. Thank you for sharing it. Guys, we're going to put everything, including their LinkedIn, into the show notes, also into the newsletter that has 11,000 subscribers now. So the idea is that, again, we want to bring these technologies, help these companies who are bringing transformative stuff, and again, putting it back into the AI world with the measurements, because garbage in, garbage out. We want to make sure that I get this correct information that I can build more applications on. including physical devices for regional cooling and software as medical devices to understand prediction modeling for the future.
Yeah.
Again, very, very important. Once we have enough corpus of data, we can actually, even before the patient lands into the ER, you will have a dashboard saying this is potentially how this is going to be. The outcome of the patient prediction again, of course, but then the outcome can be adjusted just because now you know what the risk and benefits are already, and you can talk more intelligently to the patient, the family, that, hey, I'm doing this risky thing, but here's the outcome that I'm expecting. Can we do it? And therefore, I need that measurements to do so. Tom, do you want to add anything before we close?
No, just thank you for your time. I think this is something that, AI is impacting all areas of our life. We use it a lot as a startup, just in terms of helping to identify opportunities. We've seen it improve and help us find some of these applications and ways to contact it. I've thought of it like I've got a whole team of interns, is kind of how I think about GPT, where, you don't want to take it as gospel truth. But you've got all of this information that helps us take the small team that we've got and really use it to the best advantage we can. People with experience that Jim's brought together to form our team now has all of this additional power to help put everything that we put together in it. So just one of the ways that we as a small startup have been able to get to where we are today, and hopefully have some rapid acceleration of our growth. So appreciate all you do, Junaid, to help get the word out about
Currently
this and
small. We're
help
going
to
to see
accelerate
good
it.
things coming for Luminestra. Again, I'm always available. I just want to make sure, because I do this, I don't like to get involved into officially advisory shares, but you are always available. Let me know who you need from my contacts, anything that needs to support this mission. And again, this is both clinical and military applications. So we're still going to see a lot more success, both in terms of clinical and military and commercial success as we go along. Jim and Tom, thank you so much for coming on this. We'll bring you back sometime for 5 minutes just to give us 6-month update or 12-month update, so that way people are already know that how we are progressing in this process.
And thank you very much for the opportunity. And I'd reach out to your audience and just say, hey, feel free. Junaid's going to give you contact information for us, and give us a call. Sure, we'd love to have you invest in our company, but but aside from that, we really want to, like when we first met Junaid, the first thing he said is, Junaid, we want to interview you. I want to know about what you do and what your perspective is, and help us think this through, more. And so anyone out there who thinks that there's anything that this kind of an internal temperature could actually affect your job, your role in application, we'd love to hear from you. So anesthesiologists, perfusionists, ICU care, surgical care, pretty much any physician, temperature is something that's actually very vital. And so we would love to hear from you to get your opinions, your thoughts on this, and help us think through this for future applications and all.
Again, thank you so much for everyone joining. This is going to be every week, Wednesday. It is 8 a.m. Central Standard Time that we go live, and this recording is going to be available in the future. Next week announcement, we are not going to go live because of Thanksgiving, and the week after we'll catch up as we go along. Thank you guys for joining live, whoever did. And again, make sure that you contact Jim and Tom through LinkedIn as well. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Can you